Hello, my name is Parker.
And my name is Ned.
And this is The Force Unlimited, yet another Star Wars Unlimited podcast. This is episode number 54. It is April 5th, so happy April Fools. I hope taxes are going well. I am drinking a Freem's West Coast IPA. We have still not heard if Baton is getting to design a card post-Galactics. Tonight, Ned has Lawless Math. But because I am a small child, we're going to eat dessert first. We're going to have a slice of pie. So if you're a masochist, stick around, and then, but the good stuff's at the back. But first, as always, a masochist, yes. Although it's more of a game design. Yeah. Anyways, but first we're going to talk about the game we just played. Ned, as always, you won. So why don't you tell me about it?
I don't know about always. I definitely think that I win more often, but there have been some notable loss streaks that have stung me to my core. Yeah. But I was playing JTL Boba Yellow, a counterpart to the Boba Blue that I played last time. And Parker, you were playing Force Obi Blue. Specifically,
the Force Obi Blue that I think is slightly less good but more fun. The Virgin's Temple. With the consular. That's a fun combo.
Yeah, no, I mean, like game one, first round, you play the consular. Second round, you immediately play Amidala, and I'm sweating bullets. And then
misplay there. Yeah, it's
a slight misplay.
It is not a game. It is not a deck for me to be playing late at night. Against specifically, it's a bad matchup for me late at night. Trying to make sure that I'm keeping 4 health on at least 4 health on at least one of my units against all of that ping damage.
Yes,
I had a few misplays in there, which. Not unexpected. I mean, I don't feel bad about those.
I would say that Boba.
I have been grinding all week with some decks that I think are good and less fun, and I wanted to play something and talk about something that I think is fun. And I do think there's a lot of fun decks in this set. I'm a little nervous that the fun decks and the good decks are maybe not the same. I'm not quite ready to rule on that one yet, but watching some of the meta shake out, there are good decks post Spark, so that's that feel tight, and the meta is varied and valid, but they're very linear. I think linear is maybe not quite the right word, but they're very they're the decks you would expect as opposed to maybe we're short a little wild goofiness, but I think Virgin's Temple is one of those cards that is getting better and better because while the force payoff has not necessarily been increasing, we are now in
butt size has been increasing. Yes.
Yeah, we are now in set 3 of the big butt meta. So there are now more big butts in the meta than there are big butt sets in the meta than there are not. JTL is not. JTL is the only one. So we're 3-1, and so. It's really not that hard to, on turn 1, drop a viable, valid 4 butt, 4 HP on turn 1. So you get, I mean, specifically the consular himself, but even if something's going, it's real easy to just keep that engine going, which is nice. And so I don't know if the payoff is there, but it wasn't in this matchup. But this felt like
I don't know. I think the payoff was definitely there. I think that if you had played it differently in game 1, you would have done In game 2, it was a matter of an action, right?
Sure. I think there's just that deck, and we're going to talk about blue green, but I think I don't think that deck has enough to, and maybe it will as the kind of control. I felt like I was definitely short 1 or 2 cards.
You don't have a way to interact with me in space outside of scurry fair support,
right?
Like that.
Like I just, I had protect the pod, which is which deals with space, but is less viable in a deck where you're just plinking my guys down all and so forth.
Oh yeah,
and so we'll see how I feel about it, but it was less about dealing with the things and also surviving until the blue-green engine comes online. It is. I feel like we now have like Luke was always like the de facto and then some space. There's just so much in blue-green now that feels fun and viable and painful to tuck, but yet at the same time, like, you have so much, you don't have to worry that, oh no, like that feeling you had, I think, in a previous, a few sets ago of, oh, this is the good stuff and I need to tuck it because I have to survive. There's like this deck, I was not in my mind a greedy deck, and yet still I always knew that I had so much, just like I didn't feel bad about tossing Anakin or Amidala because there's color in Yoda and Bo-Katan right behind it. That feels nice. It's a very fun deck to play, but it was a bad matchup that I played poorly. Speaking of blue-green, let's eat some pie.
Heck yeah, we're going to be talking about blue and green, command and vigilance. I actually found this difficult to write when I was writing the script because although mechanically blue and green are very distinct, like the mechanics that are available to each color are very disjointed, the way that they feel in terms of gameplay is kind of similar.
A blue-green deck has a very distinctive feel, and it I don't know, it feels like there isn't some like magic overlap. We're what, on our fifth slice of pie now? There isn't some magic overlap of where you're looking for the red cards compare your Boba deck. In your Boba deck, you're looking for the cards that in red synergize with yellow and the cards in yellow that synergize with red, that complement each other, that feed on each other or feed each other. With blue-green, you're just like, well, I'm carving out this 60% of the blue pie and this 60% of the green pie, and there's so much good. It is the blue-green is the more good stuff pairing. So like, which is why I often find myself in blue-green. But
I totally get it.
It is the more good stuff.
Red yellow.
Yeah, right. Like this is the hard-costed fatties, turn them sideways. Meta. So or not meta, but color.
Color pairing. So to go through the structure, we're first going to talk about the synergies. These are the things that these colors share, the kind of things that they overlap. And you said it exactly, hard cast fatties and turn them sideways. You have beef. I think that both blue and green have a lot of really good top end units. Like if you look at the top end of units, it's basically blue and green well shared, where blue are like more interactive and green are more linear, and then a little bit of red. And yellow just doesn't show up really at the tippy top end. And then blue and green also have this idea of setup and payoff. Green, it tends to be more units. Blue, it tends to be in other ways. But there's this idea of like sacrificing now for later. In green, this kind of manifests in ramp and in like synergy pieces. And in blue, it tends to manifest in this idea of defending until you can turn the corner. But they both share this idea of like waiting and like trying to not realize things now to get something bigger later. What
value over tempo all day, every day. Like, to my detriment, often.
So then we're going to talk about what each color likes in the other color. So what green likes in blue. Green likes blue's removal. I mean,
everybody likes
tends not to have very efficient. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that blue brings to the table most meaningfully. Like having a single card that can answer an annoying unit of your opponent's is critical. Green kind of like with protect the pod or like the various punch effects strike true.
But all of those punch effects, protect the pod, strike true, are the two they're bad. They're not bad. They're bad because when you want targeted removal is when your creatures on the board.
When you're behind.
Yeah, when your creatures on the board aren't the answer, and so having removal that requires you to have a really good creature on the board. It's like, well, if I have a really good creature on the board, I'm not actually worried about removal. That's my game plan. So it's like,
no, exactly.
This game, both games, I got an early protect the pod, and one time I tossed it, and one time I just kept looking for it. Like, when am I paying 4 to deal 3 or 4 damage? Like, it's not.
It's just not worth it.
Right.
It's not worth it, right? You really want like a takedown. You want
we all do right
now. Rivals Fall.
Yeah.
I mean, not that exists anymore.
Everybody wants those cards, Ned.
Yes. Yeah. So those are what green likes. So the removal is another thing. The other thing that green likes in blue is things that keep you alive. So green has healing and blue has healing, but blue tends to have more low-cost sentinel units than green does. This isn't uniform. There are good low-costed green sentinel units. I think of like Obi-Wan unit as being like a very efficient low-cost sentinel unit.
Typho's not bad.
Typho's not bad.
But blue's just like
Yeah.
rife with them.
With reasonably costed, big-butted sentinels that are there. So
Sentinels
you can
or
play
shielded,
ramp.
which just again
Yes.
inform that kind of
Yeah.
like I'm going to trade to prevent base and
Yep, exactly. So what does blue like in green? Blue likes green's ability to have units on the board. So one of the challenges about the removal package that blue typically rocks or has historically rocked, nowadays I don't think the blue removal package is quite as settled, but a lot of it is not well suited to taking care of small, numerous opposing units. That's not really something that blue does. And so having those green bruisers, those Battlefield Marines, those whatever the villainous version of Battlefield Marine, whose name I forget, is, your Typhos, your Obi-Wans, your Amidalas, your well-statted, reasonably sized mid-range units, is that you can just use those units to trade with your opponent's units, and you'll still have resources left in the board. Like, it's very easy in blue to be in a situation where neither you nor your opponent has resources on the board, and sometimes that's fine. And by resources here, I'm referring to like units. I'm referring to other kinds of pieces.
lowercase
that
r
able to
resources.
Yes. If you're just trading one for one, that can be difficult because at some point your opponent you will no longer be able to trade one for one with your opponent, and then your opponent can run away with the game. Whereas if you've got this green package, you can save your removal for the things that need the removal, and you can use the green units to just crush your opponent's less well-statted units. So that's really good pairing. The other thing that blue likes in red is ramp. I mean, you're going to hear this recurring. In general, each
What
color
blue likes
tends
in
to have,
what blue likes in green.
what blue likes in green. Yes, what blue likes in green. In general, and like you said with blue removal, in general, the way that the color pie is divided, that there are a couple of mechanically unique effects that are isolated in a color, and because those mechanically unique effects are isolated in that color, a lot of times what the other colors like in the color is what it has access to that nobody else does, right?
Yep.
People like blues, efficient removal. People like greens, ramp. So that's what they like. So then tensions, and I think you described this really well in the last episode, is when I'm talking about tensions, I'm talking about when I am putting on my game designer hat and I'm trying to design a card that feels blue-green, right? What are the parts of the blue color pie that make it hard to make a card feel green, and what are the parts of the green color pie that make it hard to make a card feel blue? So unfortunately, with green and blue, I had a hard time coming up with mechanically
So this is
unique
vibes based.
things.
Vibes
This
based.
is
But
vibes based.
I think
Yeah.
the big tension for blue green is that when they care about units on the board, with the a little bit out, Legends of the Force kind of ruined this because it was such a force traded set. That was the mechanic of the set, was the force trait. But force is not really, it's a type, but it's not what you think of as typal in the way that like Jedi or Mandalorian or Bounty Hunter is.
Right.
It is a trait, it is a type, so it exists on a card, and mechanically it's identical. But when you're saying something that feels, I find that green so much more cares about, often will key off the type of a card, whereas blue tends to care about the mechanics of the card. So it's shield tokens. It's this, when it's evaluating, do you have a thing on the board outside of the Legend of the Force mechanic? When you have a unit on the board, green is often, cards are often looking for, you look at like
what it is fundamentally.
Look at like Amidala, like it's looking for something else that she shares. Her damage mitigation is based on type, right?
Yes.
Whereas like you have a damage mitigation in blue is based on a shield. It's looking for a card that has a certain number of health to do a thing. It's healing, so blue tends to be very mechanic focused, whereas green, possibly to Star Wars Unlimited's detriment, is overly aggressively typo focused, and you can kind of tell. Like I bet you could just go through my blue green deck, removing all the colors, and show it to someone who hadn't only played in year one, and they could probably identify the blue and the green just by virtue of the fact that which ones are keying off keywords. And so
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good summary. And I think that that's also a good way to look at it, because one of the challenges is they both do a lot of similar things. And so how they do them, what they're looking at is where the distinction is.
Especially I think even more so in heroism, it is oftentimes a subtle distinction, and I think that's because green and blue are in heroism are both like trying to heal and keep you alive until you achieve a level of board saturation. I actually kind of feel like blue, green, and villainy have a slightly greater thematic distinction, in that blue tends to be and villainy tends to be much more about, like, you think like grit, which is a blue keyword, but it's a blue keyword that often shows up, I think, a little bit, competitively.
It's a red slanted blue keyword,
right? And so it's this thing that, like, tends to be kind of like, the blue in villainy is very much like, I'm going to sacrifice in order to make you hurt more, like uneven trades.
Yeah, uneven trading. Yeah.
Whereas, and the green in villainy is much more like, I'm going to stay alive until my other game plan comes on board, right? Whereas like the green in heroism is, I'm going to stay alive until my game plan of having lots of dudes staying alive comes on board, and blue's heroism's game plan is, I'm going to help you stay alive so that you can have lots of guys who are alive. And that the two of those, basically, when you put them together, end up kind of, I think, in heroism even feeling more the same than in villainy.
Absolutely. The biggest so moving on to these shared keywords, the biggest shared keyword between these two is Sentinel. It has like two different readings of it. So the green version of Sentinel I think of as, it's forcing unit combat, right? Where Sentinel is making your units fight. Whereas blue, it's more of this idea of a shield to keep you alive. But they both work similarly. Again, mechanically, they both green and blue tend to have big butted units that are there to absorb hits for you, so that it turns into unit combat, which is long-term grinding unit combat. Again, that idea of the value generation and the setup payoff and the beef at the top end.
No, I think like the hallmark kind of Sentinel distinction for blue versus green is that in blue, at 3 costs, so you have like heroism 3 cost, you got village protectors in blue, which is Sentinel on a shield, and it's meant to, like, you have to go through it, it's annoying, it's there to buy you a non-trivial amount of time. In green, you've got Obi-Wan, which is very much like, you get to choose the next, you're playing a force unit, it gets Sentinel, so what are you playing to force your opponent to trade with? And there's a decision of like, how do I want to do the thing, and and they're both 3 cost units that play around with Sentinel, and the heroism play around with Sentinel. I think they're but they play very differently, and they speak to how Sentinel is used by I think that's actually probably one of, for as much as we're talking about how blue and green are very overlapping and very similar, I think there's that Sentinel is one of the strongest color disparities, where, like, in a way that, like, Raid doesn't necessarily feel differently.
I think that both, red and yellow like Raid to do damage, and Raid often gets just sprinkled around whenever they need it.
Right. Whereas, like, there's I agree that there's very much like a green Sentinel and there's a blue Sentinel, and mechanically they're the same, but how they're put on the card to do.
They're used on units differently to accomplish different goals. Right.
Which is kind of eye-opening when for me. Anyway. All right, let's talk about some 2-color cards.
So going through the 2-color cards, I've kind of grouped these into 3 sets. So for the first set, feels very much to me like a home run around, this card feels blue and green. So the first set are Houndstooth, Chewbacca, and Han, where this is, you're rewarding unit combat with incremental value, right? All of them, you attack with your unit, and either like with Chewbacca you're trading, with Houndstooth you're dealing damage, with Han Han's getting bigger as he's coming out of the carbonite sickness. All of these, you are taking a unit, you are turning it sideways, and the unit is like giving you value, generally getting bigger, or like getting a punch or doing something good. That feels very blue-green to me. Lats has a punch on entry, so it's a combination of an Akbar-like effect with because it's not checking for other units around it, unlike the original Akbar effect, it feels much more like a removal spell on a body, a removal event on a body, and so that feels very blue-green to me, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a sense, though, Lats is checking. I mean, it's not a mechanic check, but it's and all cards should be played in the context of the game that's being played. Yeah. So this is maybe a nothing statement, but Lats is checking essentially the strength of your what you're up against, right? Like if you're playing Lats defensively, it gets a shield. Lats offensively takes the XP.
Yeah.
So anyway,
the next set are things that I could see being in blue-green, but don't feel like huge home runs to me. Taramin, it makes people play fair with ramp. I don't think of blue and green as like the play fair colors. I guess that is kind of where it sits, but you don't see a lot of what I would call like hate bear style effects, the effects that are designed to make your opponent not do the wacky stuff that you see in some other card games. Like theoretically, if you came up to me and you said, Ned, you have to design a hate bear for Star Wars Unlimited, what colors are you going to put that hate bear? Hate bear is a magic term. It is typically a 2-cost 2/2, which is a bear that hates on some effect that your opponent has. So sometimes they're not exactly 2-cost 2/2s. So like Thalia is a 2-cost 2/2 that is a 2-cost 2/1 with first strike that non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. So it's saying, don't stop that.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of these effects in like white. Typically.
Okay, sure.
Magic.
So, yeah. So hate bears in Star Wars Unlimited.
Yeah.
You would not expect
call
them
blue and green. I would expect them in blue-green. Taramin feels kind of like a hate bear, or hate bear-y adjacent. He's not really hate bear statted because unlike some other cards, but I could see like this being a hate bear style effect. Nothing left to fear. Punch and a buff feels pretty blue-green, where you're doing a removal spell and it's a removal event and it's unit based. The one kind of annoyance that I have, for me, I feel like Craving Power would have been better in blue-green than Nothing Left to Fear. I would have like swapped those effects, where Nothing Left to Fear, the temporary buff, I could see much more in just green. Whereas in blue-green, having the removal that sticks around, that feels more blue-greeny to me. But it's reasonable. I don't think it's bad. And Leppy Lookout, it feels kind of like a Battlefield Marine side grade in an interesting way, right? Where it's kind of like a 3/3 for 2, but instead of it having those 2 extra hit points, it has a shield, which sometimes is worth more and sometimes is worth less. And that feels kind of blue-greeny, where you're.
And then you get overwhelmed.
Yeah, and then you get overwhelmed, right?
This, I think, Ned, just goes into we need the cycle of the double keywords, and here it is.
Yeah.
Like
absolutely. And not everything's going to be a home run, right? Like designing cards is hard. You have slots that need to get filled. I feel like Leppy Lookout does a fine job for what it's supposed to do.
Yep.
And then we've got things that I don't see why they're in blue-green. Please convince me, because you did a pretty good job in red-blue last time of convincing me of things. So Ezra, it's healing and it checks for other units. Like I understand there's this cycle of the specters, and okay, we need blue and green both heal, but because both blue and green heal, having a unit that does healing doesn't feel very blue-green to me. It feels like it could be blue or it could be green. It doesn't necessarily feel like that unique Venn diagram overlap.
I think it's less that. And what's the term in Magic? There's not just the notion of like there's the allied colors and the enemy colors.
The enemy colors.
Some of the things that define like a color, or its the aspects
what
of
it can do and what it can't do.
well, and specifically like the unique nature, like both, like I don't know the color wheel off the top of my head, but like
both red and black have removal.
Well, but red and black are both opposed by. Sorry, red and black are both blah blah blah. They're both enemies of white, but then red is also an enemy of blue, and so red has like blue and white, and the things that blue and white share are exactly what red is weak at. Blah 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 blah. So I think this card is partially. It's the healing isn't blue and green. I think this is Again, this is like those kind of like kicker effects that is in this little Spectre cycle.
This is red opposed.
Right? Like this is raid 1, which is red and yellow. And so it's less about this card is very much blue and green. Is I think this similar to the Leppy Lookout. The Spectres, they're 2 in 1 color, and then so there's much defined by the other 2 colors. And so it's like, well, what do blue and green do that red and yellow don't? They heal, great. And then,
I can see it.
And then because it's blue and green, you also get a red-yellow effect, which like a raid 1 is not as easy to, is very much not in a way, I think, a blue-green effect.
Absolutely.
But it's the kicker that you get raid 1 even if you're just playing it without any red-yellow. But then, so I think that's where you got Ezra coming in as blue-green is as much defined as blue-green is not red-yellow. So
yeah, I can see it.
I'll make that argument.
All right. I mean, having legal training, I feel like you are incentivized to make feasible arguments whenever they can be made.
Zealous advocacy is the term that 2 of our listeners will immediately cotton onto.
Obi-Wan does not feel very blue-green to me. It's turning it's a wide board payoff. I mean, like, I guess I can see that like blue-green heroism is about going wide, but it doesn't. That's not really felt like the defining characteristic of blue-green to me is going wide. I feel like I've much more felt going wide as being kind of in all colors. Like they've tried it in yellow, they've tried it in red, they've tried it in green. I guess most. I mean,
who are the truest go wide decks that have done well? It's what. I mean, for a definition done well, it's Vader and Rex.
Yeah.
Who are both in green.
And Rex was double green, and Vader was like green yellow.
And so green is the go wide. If we accept that green is go wide, and blue is the color of magically override stats to become new values.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Like the whatever the force, the size.
Size matters not.
Size matters not. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else. It's not. Yeah. The effect of just like treat its values as stats as such is. I think that's a blue effect. So this is absolutely a win more on a certain. I mean, right? Like, like in what world? I'd love to see this deck actually fly, but.
Oh, no, 110%. Honestly, this is something that I love is these kinds of effects that are daring you to try and do something wacky.
Yes, agreed completely. Yeah. So, all right, I think I'm 2 for 2 for convincing you. Let's go to Bosk.
Okay, yeah. Bosk. It's a buff and a ping on attack. Buff on attack is sometimes green affiliated, but it's much, I think of like that buff and ping as being much more like green-yellow. Although the green-yellow, it's typically like just pure power, whereas the minus to hit points can be thought is like a blue effect, like minus X is a blue effect. It doesn't feel very blue-green to me. I think that you could make a case for Bosk being just blue.
Yeah, I mean, give a unit +1/+1 for this phase without the on-attack trigger. Give a unit +1/+1 for this phase is a pure green effect. That is as green as it gets. We have so many cards. Yeah. Give a unit -1/-1 for this phase. That's a pure blue effect. I will concede it is hindered a little bit by the on attack. But how do you have a repeatable on a unit without on attack? Right? Like, it's not the strongest blue green. I mean, the effect is the on attack. Like, the on attack is maybe less so. But I don't feel this is like a damning indictment of blue-green effects. Like,
I don't think any of these are damning indictments.
Yeah.
I feel like these are maybe not as strong. And then last one, Cad Bane felt like the least thematic thing to me, where it's a credit payoff in the colors that aren't really about credits. That is defined by just having like really good stats. I mean, I guess you can point to the shield and say like, oh, shield, it's blue card, but Cad Bane did not feel very thematically blue-green to me in a meaningful way.
No, I mean 6 for 6/6 shielded overwhelm is just fine by itself.
Yeah.
I mean green can get credits, but I want to know. I mean, in my mind, what this. I don't know if it's. I mean, the payoff for this card exists so that you can put your deck put a sufficient number of credits in your deck to get to the blue green fun times, without them feeling wasted later in the game. Because if any deck is going to play like 9-10 credit resource turns, it's blue green, because they're going to die if they. I mean, they might be dead, but any deck who's like going to keep resourcing, and get up to those 14 resources turns is blue green, and so in a game where you want to have credits to get there faster, then you end up in the situation where you've got 12 resources. Do you really need credits?
And Cad Bane answers that question. Like, mechanically, I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm just saying it doesn't feel very blue-green to me.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'll make the argument, converting tokens of one kind into another is a very blue effect, and experience tokens are pretty green.
Yeah.
Blue, I think, is very much the color of turn one kind of token into another.
See Finn leader.
You have Finn. You've got you've got like the move
Rose
tokens around,
Tico.
steal tokens.
Yeah.
There's a number of blue cards that do that. So I mean, again, maybe not the strongest example, but this effect belongs more in blue green than I think anywhere else.
Okay.
I'd argue.
All right.
So.
I will hear that argument. I'm not granting you that argument.
Sure.
But yeah. All right. So now we're moving on to the were our promises granted?
Yes.
Were
Tyler
our promises
test.
fulfilled? The Tyler test. For those of you who are not been consuming pie steadily throughout the last couple of shows, this is a reference to a statement made back in the early days, saying that every color is able to or ought to be able to do everything. And so we're testing.
And in theory, if every color can do everything, then in theory, every color pair can do everything.
Pair, yes. So the question is this true? And I would say I don't feel like we quite get a Tyler test here. Like you can, specifically in aggro. I can.
Yeah, let's do aggro last. So we'll absolutely blue green locks is like the color of control.
Control 110%. Like if you had to define a control deck, it is a blue green deck.
And and mid range too.
Yeah.
Blue green regularly. Villainy, you're going to be trending towards a lot of control. Although it has its share of mid range. You get you got like Kira Data Vault was the example that you gave, and then Ray Data Vault, great mid range deck doing blue green.
Yep.
Although. Funnily enough, that was anyways, Ray Data Vault mid range, but aggro we found isn't present.
Yeah, I think that like green has reasonably statted early game units, but there's not really a lot that blue is adding to green's reasonably statted early game units. There are a couple like the Secrets of Power Cassian. I keep wanting to try and make work because it feels like a very useful card if you can like do things with it, but it's never come together in a way that I think is serious. And a comment that you made before the show is, yes, you can probably try and put together some kind of blue-green aggro-y deck, but it's just going to be a worse version of a blue-green or mid-range. Like you're always going to be getting pulled into a more mid-rangey direction with it.
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, maybe one day, there's so much value in blue.
Yes.
In surviving until later, and and you can use blue to augment, I think, other colors into aggro, but green is not the color that is going so hasty that the way blue and green synergize is just not not 2 out of 3 on the Tyler test, which and again I think the key thing to note is that for your locals you could totally bring a blue-green aggro deck. It would catch some people by surprise. You'd have some fun. It would be interesting. You'd talk about it. But you could just put in like 10 different cards and have a better mid-range deck. So,
yeah.
And I don't think anything's taken anything down. So there's, obviously you can build anything, right? Like,
if you know of a blue-green aggro list, get in the comments.
Yeah, we'd love to hear like a decent one. So, archetypes you would expect to see in green-blue that you have not seen, Ned?
Not a lot. I feel like of the things that green and blue do, most of them have been covered. I think that the main thing you could point to is some kind of like a more upgrade-focused list. This is like the missing blue-green aggro list is that you have like little green men that you throw good upgrades on to turn into monsters. But
if there's ever, what was that mechanic in Magic where like the first one was like was it Shadow, where like it was like second flying, the other flying?
Yeah. Shadow was like it. Yeah.
Cards with Shadow can only block cards with Shadow and can only be blocked by cards with Shadow. If Magic, I mean, the problem is like Star Wars Unlimited already has that kind of evasion mechanic built in with two lanes, so there isn't necessarily a need to build one. But if there's ever a world where that is, like, I feel like you would see an aggro deck in blue green in some. I mean, that kind of evasion I think would track with blue green, but all right, that is our pie. Now, while you've all stuck around, is the meat and potatoes. Like children, we are going to make you eat your vegetables. This is the good stuff, though. This is the stuff that actually like will enrich you and make you better. It is law math. It is Ned Math. But I think the key question is, Ned, what is your name?
My name is Monday.
All right, so we did Ned Math on Law. That like at this point, if you're here for Ned Math, you've seen us do it a number of times. You've seen Ned do it a number of times. Ned, tell us about what you found in A Lawless Time.
So before I did, as part of doing A Lawless Time, I felt that the first most important thing was to compare the pre-law and the post-law standards. Is there a statistically significant difference between the two? The answer is no. It's not surprising considering that there's a huge amount of overlap between the two. Like there's basically one set in the new Premiere that was not present in the old Premiere. You are looking at like a different subset of the cards, but I think if these two sets are going to diverge, you can point to.
So wait, but you're saying 6 versus 7 or 6 versus 4?
6 versus 4.
Okay.
6 versus 4.
Okay, so Spark dropping out is actually not materially significant according to Ned Math.
According to Ned Math, it is not materially significant. Spark, Shadows, Twilight dropping out are not there. And I tested both like coefficient by coefficient, and I also tested overall. So for those of you who are real sickos, you can essentially try and validate like are two curves the same if you're measuring these curves with some like level of statistical precision, which is essentially what we're doing. And the answer is no. They're largely the same. There are some coefficients that of themselves were hinting. They weren't at the level where I would call it statistically significant, but they were above a 50% chance that they were like represented a difference.
Tell me about
let's talk about those. The first one is damage. So I have this variable called invisible damage, and so this is cards that do damage when they enter or when they attack, and I discount when
I think it's been
attack.
too Ned Math to note that currently Ned Math is exclusively units and leaders.
Yes.
So when Ned is talking about damage, he is not talking about any of the litany of events that do damage.
No, absolutely not.
Just units that do damage.
Specifically, just units, because events, it's much harder to compare events to events.
Yep.
But yeah, damage seems to cost more now. Previously, in prior Premiere, it was 0.18 resources per point of damage. So that is, if you had a unit and you gave it a point of damage when it entered, that unit would cost 0.18 more resources. Whereas now it's 0.23. Again, it's not statistically significant, but because there are error bars on these terms, and the error bars are such that there's a significant amount of overlap. But it seems interesting. The next one is actually I found fascinating because I was not expecting this, and that is ambush costs a lot less now. It's not statistically significant, but it is, to my eyes, significant, and that is now it's 0.58 resources to give a unit ambush, whereas before it was 0.82 resources to give a unit ambush. So about a third of a resource cheaper to give a unit ambush than it was previously.
How much, and I know we're in Ned Math now, but how much do you vibes-wise attribute this to bigger butts? Because in my mind, ambush becomes, you want it to, it's less threatening when everybody's got big butts.
When they stick around. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is ECL leaving, is that you don't have free ambush anymore, and so you don't have.
Oh, right. So if everything had free ambush, then now if they want to have the same amount of ambushing going on, they have to make it a little bit cheaper. Okay, cool. Yeah. And what else?
Last one is bonus power is cheaper. So I have a variable called invisible power, and this covers things like giving experience. This is I typically save this for when units give permanent stat buffs or at least long-term temporary stat buffs to other units.
So this would also include C-3PO type things where it's...
Yeah, this would include C-3PO type effects. This would not include things like Fleet Lieutenant.
Right.
Or Maz from, I treat that as invisible damage because it's just for a single activation. So it's effectively damage.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's about half as expensive as it used to be, bonus power. It used to be 0.23 resources per point of bonus power, and now it is 0.12 resources per point of bonus power. That said, the error bars on bonus power are pretty big because I'm having to wrap a large number of different things under this kind of same rubric in order to get statistically meaningful results. And so it's not a statistically significant difference between these two, but it is large in my eyes, and it's more likely than not that this represents a change in thinking. All of these three things that I pointed out it is more likely than not that this represents that there has been some kind of a change.
These are second order effects from everybody got +1 health.
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of these are. There's only one new feature that came out of the law math. Unfortunately, destroying credits was not wide enough spread to count, but making credits is worth about half a resource. So given that ramp was worth about a resource, making credits is valued at about half as expensive as ramping, which seems reasonable to me.
So mindful that all damage is destroying shield tokens, are we getting almost to a point where destroying tokens is, well, I know you can't, something to look into next time while destroying credits may not be, there's a number of cards that destroy some kind of token.
There's another thing, we're almost at the point where I need to break out shield versus giving a unit a shield, where right now I'm coding units that give other units shield as just effectively shielded or a conditional shielded.
Right.
But they're a lot more experimenting with just letting units give other units shielded. And so if that's the case, I can just start breaking that out and treating that as its own variable, which I will if we see more of those units.
Could have an effect. Yeah. So Ned, Gideon's light cruiser has rotated out.
Yes.
I don't know. I feel like this is a cause for celebration.
I'm as sad as the next person. I still think that at some point a Gideon's light cruiser-like effect is going to be playable and has been playable.
In Darth Vader.
Gideon's light, yes, right. It's just Gideon's light cruiser was tied to Moff Gideon. Right?
Yes, right.
That was its downfall. So I have the top 10 outstanding units in New Premiere. So the way that this analysis works is that I take the entire data set of the New Premiere cards, I run my regression on them, and then I ask the model, if I was to tell you the stats of the unit and the abilities of the unit in the way that I've coded them, can you guess what the resource cost of this unit is? And then I compare the model guessed resource cost to the actual resource cost. And I'm looking for units that have the highest difference between what the model guesses the resource cost is to the actual resource cost.
The highest difference in one direction, right? Like you're looking
Yes,
for the
that's
ones
correct.
that
Not
Ned
in the other direction.
Yes, Ned Math
Yes.
is saying these are outliers for being undercosted by Ned Math.
Yes, these are undercosted as far as Ned Math is concerned. And I've tried to add a little bit of why commentary. This isn't definitive. This is me. I tried to mess around. One of these is actually weirded me out, and I spent a good half hour doing debug and just trying to figure out why it kept showing up. And I could not for the life of me everything looked copacetic. It still is weird to me that it is, but we'll get there when we get there. Number 10, Maul, Master of the Shadow Collective, is costed at 7 resources actually, and the model predicts it to be costed at 8 resources.
How much of this is you? So 10, remember we're doing Letterman style, so 10 is the least of the top 10 outliers. How much of this do you attribute to being how you judged it?
Entirely, right? Like this card, the entirety of the effect is the steal, right? Like how do you cost the steal? And I cost the steal as it draws you it has a chance, so this is downgraded, but it has a chance of drawing you a card and giving you a bunch of invisible stats and just dealing effective damage to your opponent, right? That's what I model stealing as. Like it's dealing damage, giving you invisible stats, and drawing you a card.
Sure.
Which is a lot. And like it's not guaranteed, and that's why it's 0.7. That's why it's only number 10. But like if you can get that off half the time, which is what I have it coded as, then that's still a lot of value.
All right. Yeah.
Number 9 is the one that caused me the most consternation, and I don't have a good explanation for it other than the explanation that I'm about to give. Number 9 is Populist Advisor. Where it is cost 1 and it was predicted as costing 2.05, just a tiny little bit above Maul, Master of the Shadow Collective. Before you ask, why Populist Advisor? That's the same question that I was asking myself. It's not unique as being a 1/4 for 1. I think the things that are definitive about it is the fact that it is uncommon, non-unique, and has 2 aspects. That like triplet of effects, and also conditional sentinel.
Right, like because if this was, and that's wild to me, right? Because it's not something that necessarily you think about when you're talking about playability, but it is something that factors into Ned Math, right? Like, if you're a competitive player playing constructed, rarity is a 0 issue. It affects maybe cost, but it's you're playing a hypothetical game at that point. But it does factor into Ned Math.
Right.
So an uncommon
because
being...
I'm trying to build the most accurate predictor of unit stats, and knowing a unit's rarity matters a lot for what its stats are.
No, exactly. Right. Like if this was a legendary, which would have to make it unique.
We have several examples of legendaries with slightly better text and better abilities. We have several examples of unique legendaries with better text and better abilities.
Right. And so the fact that, but this just, and I think I love Populist Advisor.
It's a fine card. It's just if you were to point me to the file of cards, the fact that Populist Advisor showed up on the top 10 list made me do a lot of debugging just to make sure that nothing was going wrong.
Well, I think
no.
I think that's one of the things. It's interesting though because in theory, being undercosted or overcosted is not something that would be relevant to being on the top 10 list, right? Like you can be undercosted if you're an uncommon. You can be undercosted if you're non-unique, and yet the Ned Math top 10 list is overwhelmingly uniques.
Yes,
they tend to be the most pushed. But Populist Advisor up there, great card, love it. What is number 8?
Number 8 is the Invisible Hand Crawling with Vultures. The reason why I'm pretending that you are only playing this in a deck that has a bunch of droids, and it draws and plays a bunch of units. If you are playing a deck,
every deck I've played a lot of Invisible Hand, and every deck you play it in, like you're real sad when it misses. Like, you're mostly evaluating it on, does it hit the thing I really want, Conch Droid or whatever, but like, you're always like, fine, I'll take this instead.
Yeah, and again, the draw and play a bunch of units effects are very competitive because they're drawing you cards and making stats at the same time.
Also, we could Yep.
Number 7, Ogdo Bogdo. And the reason for this is I need to clean up the frequency with which it can't attack, where I have a variable called can't attack, and I was evaluating can't attack in a universe in which Han 2 existed. Han 2, I didn't go back through my file and reassess everything's can't attack. But Ogdo Bogdo is now much less able to attack than it used to be.
Right. So this one's a little bit of an outlier, but we'll catch it in ashes.
Yes. Number 6 is Invincible Naval Adversary. And before you ask which one is that, it is the 6 cost that discounts itself if you control a unique separatist unit and it bounces something. And for why, it's discounted and it bounces something, right?
Your math is assuming a high likelihood that when you play it, you have a unique separatist card. There is, I assume Ned Math does not accurately capture the. So one of my favorite things. This will shock people. I'm a software developer at work, and we use Datadog aggressively. If you are in software, you know what that means. Datadog, for those who don't know, is a tool that basically tracks everything that you're doing. And then allows us to see what you're doing so that we can see why things are going wrong. And before you get on our case, all of our tools are purely internal. So whatever, we're paying the money. Yeah. Point being, there's a frustration index. You can see a heat map of a screen, and Datadog can rate how angry this part of the screen makes people based on like that moment when you click on something and the button doesn't do what you think it's going to do. So you click a bunch of times. Like that's a user getting frustrated. I would love to get to a point where Ned Math can capture the frustration of a card sitting in your hand because you put it there and you can't, right? Like because Invincible, Ned Math loves it when you play it. But the reason why maybe the card isn't the most competitive is maybe you don't have a unique separatist card in play. So like,
Right, and so I don't count it as a full resource cheaper. I count it as a fraction of a resource cheaper because that's not always the case, but I do consider it to be pretty reasonable. And for those of you who are real math sickos, it costs 6 in the real world, and Ned Math evaluates it at 7.15 resources worth of value. Number 5, we're into the top half, is Fireball, an explosion with wings. Costs 2, Ned Math costs it at 3.2, and the answer is it's a 3/3 in space with ambush, right? Like that's really good stats. The ticking down a hit point every turn, I do have that. Before you say yes, no, I do have that coded. I have that coded as like 1 point of negative invisible hit points because most of the time it's not ticking.
But mild shock, a 3/2 with ambush in space, also for 2, is still real good, right?
Yeah.
Like that's still a real good card. So that just absolutely, tracks. Yeah.
Number 4 is Grand Admiral Thrawn, Grand Schemer. The model puts it at 8.3 resources. The actual cost is 7 resources. And the answer is because it readies and captures and then double captures, right? So the model evaluates capture pretty highly. Readying it evaluates pretty highly. Now, I don't give it like a full ready and a full capture because you get to do one of those two when played. But even half a ready and half a capture because you're getting at least one of those two, plus a second capture is a lot of value. Number 3 is Bendu. Do You Fear the Storm? Costs 8. Model has it at 9.33. So
how do you model damage that you have to do to your own? Right, like is that negative? Do you have a negative damage sense?
It's negative hit points.
Oh, okay.
It's negative invisible hit points.
Okay.
And the answer is it does a lot of damage. I typically cost cards, assuming that there are 2 units on the board for both you and your opponent. That seems to be like a relatively reasonable. So it's doing 6 damage on attack, which isn't a full 6 points of damage. I model it as 4 points of damage because of the stats, but that's still a lot of damage and a lot of stats, right? Like you're getting a lot of value from Bendu.
Number 2 is I think the bluest card in the game.
Oh, 110%. The Annihilator, Taki's flagship, costs 11 resources. The model has it at 12.74 resources. And the answer for why, it kills and it has a chance of discarding a card from your opponent's hand. So I'm costing it as killing 7 hit points worth of stuff because I'm assuming that by the time you're playing it, your opponent has a 7 hit point unit on the board. And then I did the math for if you have 3 copies of a unit in your deck, and one of them is in play, what are the odds that you have one of the other two copies of that unit in your hand? And so it has a chance to discard that is proportional to that, which is small, but significant enough that it remains in the top. The last one, I think...
I just want to note... Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't get to talk about Annihilator on the show enough. I think I owe Eric, I think that's his name, I don't know, an apology. I still feel bad about annihilating swarming vulture droids in Twin Suns.
Wow. Wow.
So, you have a higher likelihood of encountering. There was a window. I don't know if it's been true for a couple of weeks. In Twin Suns, encountering swarming vulture droids, people get excited about being able to break the Twin Suns rule. So I feel like you encounter swarming vulture droids a little more often, and
Oh yeah.
that's a good way to make an enemy or a friend. What is number one, Ned?
Number one, as you said, that number two is the bluest card that ever blued. I think number one is the greenest card that ever greened.
Yeah,
It's Supremacy of unimaginable size. Cost 12 resources. The model has it at 14.2 resources. It's got enormous size. It has ambush, and then even like modeling the stats is not a full +6/+6, as just like an additional +2/+2 of invisible stats.
It's still a lot of invisible stats.
It's just a lot. It's a lot of unit.
And I want to know what world you're playing Supremacy with no other vehicles. Right? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
but
more a
sometimes
question.
you don't.
But it's more a question of like, what are you doing on turn, resource 12?
Right.
Like,
And before you ask, you'll notice that a lot of these are high resource units, and I do have a variable for is big. So if a unit has a lot of stats, it kind of gets resource discounted a little bit. And the reason for that is that after a certain point, more stats just aren't worth more, right? Like the effect of stats on card value in a game sense, low cost, like if your stats are too small, like then that's bad. If your stats are too big, like you're wasting a bunch of it. Like if you could make Supremacy a 50, like a 30-30, right? I don't think it would meaningfully impact the gameplay pattern of Supremacy at all.
Right. No, you're playing Supremacy, and either they have a single card to answer to it, or they don't, and that's game.
And they lose. Yeah. No.
All right, dear listener, we are dangerously close to being longer than an hour. So this has been episode number 54. Eat dessert first, and we've still got 2 more slices of pie?
One more slice of pie.
Oh my God, one more slice of pie. Okay.
In the fridge. Yes.
As we all know, that is either the best or worst slice of pie, the last slice. So tune in 2 weeks. If you have any thoughts about the episode, please get in the comments. Email us at forceunlimited@gmail.com, or, ping us on Discord, whatever. Ned, do you have final thoughts about this episode?
I do. The final thought on this episode is I had to look up the 2-valued t-test again because I had to do it by hand. And boy, that was... And by hand, I mean in Excel. But it was still
so you
interesting
noted
to have to dust off that.
A discrepancy in the data that I sent you for Master Codebreaker.
Yes, that is another thing.
I wanted to talk about because you said, "Oh my God!" So there is. I'd love to make a graph sometime, but this is a graph one of those graphs that has no numbers associated with it. On one axis, you have how cool is the card, and on another axis, you have major legendaries go at the top and. Trash commons go at the bottom. Another axis, you have how big is the typo, right? Like, so is it like the stat is wrong, or the name is misspelled? And on the other end, though, you have something like what I refer to as typographic errors. So, for example, Fantasy Flight is, we're going over an hour. I'm sorry, dear listener. Fantasy Flight is mildly inconsistent with how they treat an ellipses. If you're not into fonts, you may not know that. I hope if you're a listener to the show that you know that an ellipses is 3 dots. You should know what that word means. But what you may not know is that it is actually a character in a lot of fonts. So you can type 3 paragraphs or 3 periods. And if you're in Microsoft Word, Microsoft Word will replace those 3 periods with a single Unicode character, and if you're on like Notepad or something, it will not. Well, Fantasy Flight has some cards in their official database that have the ellipses and some that have the 3 dots. That's what I call a typographic typo. So you've got one axis typographic, the other like how cool is the card, and you can kind of plot through there how quickly are people going to notice if I have fat fingered something, or any of the home run bridge crew has fat fingered something. Sometimes it's fascinating. You can tell like, oh wow, this card's a trash common and it's a typographic error because it took 2 sets. Whereas like if you misspell anything on like a boba card, it's immediately like 24 hours. Like and the Master Codebreaker might be, I think, the biggest outlier on. I am shocked
because it was showing up when I first ran the regression. I was pointing to Parker, and I'm like, "Gosh, this is showing up in my top 10." This I've not seen anybody play this card.
Right? Yeah, and yet
2/4 reduces cost, draws a card. Well, that's what my math was saying, and
then turns out it's not 240. So, anyways, dear listener, we will. I was shocked that that error existed. Not that errors existed, just that it had gone on that long. We will see you in 2 weeks, dear listener. Thank you. We adore you, and may the force be with you.